and our students, I welcome Mr. Smith for this journey to the CSUIT CEO Meet 2023. Let us start with an intro by one of our students. Then Mr. Smith will share about the background and how he started about the career, the beginning. Then we will go with the Q&A. Let's start now.
Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. I warmly welcome everyone to ASBM Lead Talk 2023, which is organized by Adithya School of Business Management, Coimbatore. I feel super privileged to welcome you all to this wonderful occasion. I welcome our Honorable Chair, Mr. Praveen Kumar Sir, to this event in their absence. I welcome our diligent mentor, Professor and Head of ASBM, Dr. N. Sundrapandian Sir, for this event. Now I welcome our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Sumit Pathak, CEO of Linus International FSHCO, Dubai, United Arab Emirates. As a CEO, he built and lead teams, established entities of the parent organization, and drive revenue growth. As a proven starter with an outgoing personality accustomed to working in dynamic and challenging environments to under pressure. His experience is complemented by a Jewish doctor degree in intellectual property and financial service law from New York Law School, an MBA in entrepreneurship from Drexel University, Liebau College of Business, and a BS in biomedical engineering from Drexel University. It has given him a solid educational foundation that sharpened his communication, analytical, and research skills. He always tried to achieve optimum results. I profoundly delighted to take this opportunity to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Sumit Pathak, Sir, to this occasion. It's my pleasure to a cheerful welcome to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. If I'm not pronouncing your name wrong, Saron? Saron?
Yes, sir. Correct, sir. Sharon Binia. Yes.
Saron Binia. Yeah. And Dr. Sundar, thank you for taking out the time to host this event. And it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk to everyone and provide any and all support, guidance that I can muster up and give, because to be very honest, I'm beyond work. I do not believe I consider myself to be an extremely experienced person to be imparting this level of knowledge that might be, I guess, beneficial to a younger generation. That I have a long way to go, personally speaking. So that's the idea. The idea here is for me to be available as much as I can to answer any and all of your questions. I will give a little bit of a brief about myself and what I did and how I got where I got. But it is important to know that everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey should be different. By no means should you be expecting that there is going to be one single rubric or a matrix or some specific formula that is going to work as a one plan that fits all. It's never the case. I've made my fair share of mistakes of trying to emulate, even use the excuse of inspiration to try to copy other mentors, leaders, owners of other organizations, groups, and conglomerates in an effort to try to replicate their success. But in more situations than one, I have actually failed at trying to do that because I am a different individual. My history is different. My education is different. And I have to create my own path. But what I can learn more often than not, and this is what we should strive for, is not to make the same mistakes again that others have made. Right? And you will see this time and again. People have made innumerable number of errors, and there is no better education, no better learning than that. My journey is one of, I believe, so far at least, discovery. I by no means knew what I wanted to do. To quite an extent, I still consider myself a fairly confused person who is continually growing and developing and trying to learn as much as I can. And keep an eminently open mind. That's something that I cannot stress enough, right? You have to understand that the concept of pivoting and changing your path, moving in a slightly different direction or a dramatically different direction, has no time limit, has no restriction. You can do that anytime in your life. I was born and raised here in the UAE, in Dubai. And up until at the end of my high school, which is 12th grade, I had chosen a career path in computer science, specifically computer science, hardware engineering, which at that time just seemed very attractive because it was in line with my hobbies. There were no mentors, there were no guidance professionals, counselors that I had access to. I was just I was living in my own world and I had to figure it out by myself. So that came with its own restrictions. So I ended up choosing that and moving on into my college life to then chart out my life in computer hardware engineering. And this was in the US, where within a matter of 1 year, I quickly realized that I was not particularly happy in what I was doing. Now, this is one thing that is not common within our culture. And I say our because among Indians, it's really not easy for us to change our path once we stick to something that we need to do. If you're going to go into computer science or IT, we go into that, we're unhappy, it doesn't matter, it's the path we chose, right? Society doesn't really particularly help us in making a good decision because it has given us only limited options. By no means is that a negative thing, it's just a cultural thing. It's the same with the Chinese, it's the same with a lot of other East Asian cultures. But in the West, you have a certain level of freedom of choice. You can choose after the first year, after the third year, after the fifth year, to change whatever your career path will be, depending on where you find fulfillment. And that was something that was very liberating for me coming from an Indian background, considering even though I was born and raised in the UAE, there is a very, very large Indian community here. Upwards of 40% of the population is Indian, specifically in Dubai. And the Indian culture, social cultural norms are still prevalent here as they are back in India. So I was given an option of go into engineering or become a doctor. I chose not to become a doctor, specifically because my sister became a doctor. So it was just like, oh, there can't be two doctors in a family, right? No logic, but just a thought. On the other hand, I chose engineering and I chose hardware engineering, specifically because I used to play a lot of video games. I used to build computers. So that was just a passion that just might as well make this a career, right? Within the first year of college, I understood through some amount of guidance and mentorship that that's not going to be my path. I find it tremendously boring, limiting, restrictive, not intellectually stimulating. And I dramatically shifted to 180 degrees in the opposite direction. That is after 1 year of education, like having already spent the money and the time on that 1 year. I moved to biomedical engineering, which is as close as it can get to medicine without actually being medicine. So there's 2 years of medicine and there's 3 years of engineering, product development, tissue engineering, biomaterials, basically hard biological sciences. So the reason I did that was because I actually was surprised how much I actually enjoyed biology, how much I enjoyed the tech related to biology, right? And it was an up and coming field. It was cutting edge 15 years ago or 18 years ago. And that nature of being cutting edge essentially would make me a hot commodity in the market for sure. And that was something my professors were guiding me towards. Not just me, the whole class, essentially. I just had to be open-minded and absorb that information. So that one thing led to another. I finished my education. I essentially got into work, I started applying the principles that I learned. I did only about 1 year worth of work, and I realized very quickly that whatever products I would work on as a level 1 scientist in the US was, after the development aspect, I would never know what happened with that product, where it was going to go, what the marketing team would do, what the legal team would do, and where it would actually end up in the market. And I would just continue to do as a level 1, level 2, level 3, up until level 5. I would do repetitive work, which might not truly have any meaning. Where the real magic lies is above the level 5. You got to wait 10 years to get there and all that. Or otherwise, I need to change departments. So again, through some decent mentorship that I had, people found out that I had certain skills that I might not myself recognize. I had the ability to orate. I had the ability to talk fairly well, argue with good points about things that I believed in. All of these traits which were becoming more and more important for someone who performs in the legal field. Now, for me, that was confusing because the legal field is a complete dramatic shift again to another sector that is completely unrelated to the path that I had chosen. But fortunately for me, with some good guidance that I actually had, I was able to marry the two. So I became an intellectual property lawyer. I started studying for it. First, of course, I wrote the exams and I passed the entrance exams and all that, and I became a candidate. Specifically because as an intellectual property lawyer, I would still be working on the science and tech aspect and the biology aspect of the products, but at the same time, I'd be going into the legal part, which would allow me then to understand exactly where the product will go, where its licensing would happen, who it would be sold to, where, how it would progress in the product life cycle, and I'll be able to follow it at every step. Which was far more exciting to me to see the global, without getting into details about the products that I was working on, these products are specifically global products. They have patents associated with them, and they would be sold internationally to physicians around the world. So fairly exciting proposition. And that's when I got into intellectual property law. I completed my law and I worked for about 1.5 years in legal compliance. Very interesting work. Again, repetitive, but interesting in that there's always something exciting going on. For a person who has a scientific background, it was very interesting to see science, how that would basically be protected from a legal perspective. And then, as if this disruptions that I've done so far to my own academic career was not enough, I chose to actually come back after 1.5 years of work back to UAE, where my family business, which is what my father had set up in the 10 years that I was in the US, had reached a point where he was looking for help. Now, I had a choice, a crossroads. I had to either continue in the US, and I was in a very strong trajectory to continue on that path where 10, 15 years down the line, you'd be a partner in a law firm in New York or Philadelphia or Boston or any of the eastern cities. Or I could come back and I would struggle with a small business, really small business, and then take it to another level with, implementing the learnings that I have had. Now, whether that learning would be relevant or not, considering on one side, I've got a Western education, which does not gel fairly well with the Indian way of doing business or the Arabian way of doing business. I actually realized something about myself, which is something that's a self-discovery thing that everyone should do, is how hungry are you for self-development? I realized one thing, that unlike most people, I actually enjoy discomfort. And I realized that the only way I'm going to develop is that I'm going to keep myself consistently uncomfortable. When I say uncomfortable, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm suffering pain or I'm troubled or bothered all the time, but it is, if you're going to stay complacent and you're going to stay in the same field, you will become an expert in that field. But it'll take you 15 years to 20 years. But if you want to, instead of going, vertically upwards, You want to go laterally and vertically. So that's basically a reverse pyramid. You need to continue to make yourself feel discomfort. And that means going outside of your comfort zone, getting educated in something that you are afraid of, going into a business environment that you would be completely, you feel out of place in. Sitting with people who are experts who you are intimidated by. This is where you would essentially learn far more than you would in your education, in your college, in your degrees, and even in your first year of work. So I chose to actually come back because I was like, well, let me see what I can apply from what I've learned so far into a business and see how far I can take that. So we started with a really tiny organization here with only about 11 staff and about 60 blue-collar workers in a woodworking facility, which I have zero experience in, right? I mean, it doesn't even remotely come close to my experience. But what it did allow me to implement is whatever learnings I had so far about the right business practices, about the principles of basic engineering, having a background in engineering, having a background in law, and of course, I did my MBA while I was doing my, I forgot to mention that, I did my MBA while I was doing my admissions test to law school. There was a year and I got a full ride scholarship. So I just chose to do it because I had a lot of free time. What I find myself looking back, that even if I could not directly apply any of my education, is that I'm afraid of nothing. My MBA taught me business principles that I do not shy away from. I'm not afraid of. When they're talking, I understand it on a basic level. I might not be a CFA or a CA, but I can speak to them. I can understand the numbers. I can know the logic behind things. From a legal perspective, I'm an actual lawyer, so you can't walk around me. I can negotiate contracts. I can look at the details of agreements. I can even negotiate on my behalf as well as my company's behalf without feeling afraid. And I know for a fact I will not suffer at the hands of incompetent lawyers. And from an engineering perspective, I'm no longer afraid at all of science, of technology, of the fear of not understanding math. That mathematics is a big problem, at least in certain cultures. If you're going into the arts or humanities, you'll be afraid of math. So not being afraid, or just having that personality where you can just jump in, that and basically do the best of it and learn through that process, is what you should consistently strive for, in my opinion. And that has led me to implement new technologies, bring on people in the team far more intelligent than I am, far more aggressive, experienced, older. And that led to that little bit of a trajectory of growth. The first 4 or 5 years was nothing but critical mistakes after another, right? I made the mistakes of investing in the wrong things, my time specifically, brought on people who, lack of experience, I did not know how they would perform, how to even manage them. So there's one thing called textbook management, and then the other one is reality. Enough errors happened along the way. The team was consistently in upheaval. So people would join, they would leave. While the company was behaving in a way where it was also kind of discovering itself. It's like a human being almost, that it's like, who am I? What's my personality, right? Took almost 5 years for that to happen before some small changes started going in the right direction. And then I came to the conclusion, not immediately, but over time, that this is not my calling either. I am not supposed to be an operations manager. I'm not supposed to sit there perpetually for the rest of my life and just run one organization and make it an extremely large one. My goal is to make a diversified portfolio of companies. So slowly we started planning how to invest in other companies. Oh, there's a scaffolding company available for sale in a neighboring emirate. Let's keep an eye out and see whether the numbers are truly what they are saying it is. The numbers are very small at that stage. Of course, the investments were done in a very tiny manner. But I basically realized the Western way of doing things. Growth happens, one, that you invest in the same company and continue to go in that one direction. And the other is to actually continue to push by growth laterally by buying other companies or investing in other companies. So I chose the latter. And before you know it, another 3 or 4 years passed, and we've got 5 companies now. That part of that conglomerate, we feel we are in a good position because we are very diversified. So if one company drops, the other one continues to maintain. Another one company drops, this one comes right back up. The cyclical nature of each of these industries in scaffolding, in real estate development, in interior designing, in joinery manufacturing, basically just kind of insulate us from a ridiculous amount of stress that the market can create with its cycle. So there would be crests and troughs in the market, specifically related to the economic conditions, recessions and booms and whatnot. And different booms happen in different markets. So if the UAE was in a 5-year recession from 2015 to 2020, and then the pandemic happened, we were lucky enough to invest a little bit in the US, which was geographic diversification. The US was doing well at that time. So then that basically created a foundation for us there. And over time, now we are looking to expand into the UK and Saudi Arabia, all of whose economies are independently working on their own right. At the same time, they're connected to the global scale. So if there's a global recession, all of the countries will suffer, but Saudi Arabia won't suffer as much as UAE. The US will recover faster than the UAE. So if you keep these macroeconomic thought process in place, you'll be much more resilient then to weather an economic storm. So my journey is like literally just beginning. I really not sure if I'm the ideal person to tell you an entire journey of growth and development, but it is, it's well on its way to its next chapter. Now, instead of just investing on a private level, the next step, chapter 2, I would say, or whatever chapter number you can put it, is going to be the establishment of a private equity fund. The first of its kind in our family or our extended circle is to essentially set up a fund and allow independent investors, third-party investors, as well as ourselves, to invest in companies all around the world. These would all be small and medium businesses. I mean, they would do fairly well overall, and we will continue to invest in companies over time and give good returns to investors. So if you look at it, it is working as a scientist, working as a lawyer or a legal professional, and then moving to the next level and the next level and the next level. As an investor is where you really want to be at the end of your life. When I say end of your life, not from a biological life, I mean from a career. You will be the absolute peak when you are you're running a fund, or you are as an investment professional, you're managing wealth, as opposed to looking at day-to-day operations and restrictions and problems. That's where I wanted to be. I did not know the path, so there was a lot of stumbling blocks along the way. There was a lot of restrictions, there were a lot of challenges, there was losses, there were problems that happened n number of times. But we have to realize we always get up. We always get up and we always move on and we go to the next step. I know I've kind of probably been all over the place with the way I've actually explained this, but I would welcome any and all questions.
Yes, Mr. Smith, it's interesting being a computer engineer to bio, then bio to legal, legal to business. And I think you have had a versatile kind of experience, diversified experience in your career. And you'd say like 4 kind of major career steps you have taken it. That's really, really, that's what we wanted to learn from this. We want the students to learn from this. You got to be dynamic enough to face the fact. Right? Well, I'm trying my best. I want to reiterate the fact that there is no definable set in stone characteristic here, right? There's no, you can do whatever you want and you can change it at any point in time, and be ready for everyone to tell you in no better words, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Right? I mean, why are you doing this? But as you said why earlier, can't you figure it out? Yeah. Yeah. As you said earlier, the culture, you see, once you start with one thing, you can't suddenly change it like how you did it in overseas in UAE, right? So
Yeah.
you got to consider a lot of factors, maybe your family, your surroundings, your
Absolutely.
society, your country,
Absolutely.
your nation, so much to convince actually. It's not going to be
Absolutely.
accepting you, the changes, but you have to be ready for the change.
You have to be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. So growth comes from discomfort. If you want to go and become a manager, you have to be uncomfortable to be in that position. That is not a greener pasture by any means, right? A manager is a manager because he has to take a whole new level of pressure, right? That manager becomes a CEO because you have to take 10 times that amount of pressure. And you now have to report to shareholders and you have to report to investors, and who are not easy to manage. They're probably the most difficult people to manage. So everyone's got their pressure at every level. So yeah.
You're going to be working with, situations, a lot of situations, not programmed problems you're going to face. You're going to face contingency based or kind of on the floor. Every day you can see hundreds of problems will pop up and you got to solve with the knowledge and wisdom you have, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter how much you are prepared. Of course, it is important to be prepared, but no matter how much you plan, you're going to be thrown a curveball at some point in time, right? There's going to be that googly that will come up where you just sit there and be like, wow, I didn't see this coming. But your vast amount of experience is going to allow you to create a framework where you'll be like, okay, this is the framework that I'm in. As far as the problem is within this framework, I'll find a solution. Very rarely do the problems fall out of that framework if you are well prepared enough, right? You have contingencies in place. For example, Visa and MasterCard as a company have considered that should there be a gigantic flood, their headquarters will, probably be underwater. So they basically created contingencies in the 70s to back up their information, create the underground bunkers that they need to do to protect their data centers. But what happens in case there is an alien invasion? And that's such a weird thing to talk about because that sounds like science fiction. But what if it does happen, right? They have contingencies in place for utilizing the same SOP, the standard operating procedure, for any of these different systems, whether that's a nuclear collapse, whether it's a flood, whether it's an alien invasion, whether it's the country's economic collapse, anything. So the idea would be you can be as prepared as you want. There might still be things you can't be prepared for, but just be ready to apply what you know and then tweak it and modify it as you see results every step of the way. Yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Smith, and let us just go with some questions on the floor. Yes, you can start with questions.
Greetings, sir. This is Maidin here.
Nice to interact
with you.
Yes,
nice to interact with you, sir. Tell us more about your Linus International, sir, and about your stakeholders.
Okay. So essentially, Linus International is the youngest organization in the group. Yeah, it's the youngest organization in the group. Interestingly, even though it's the youngest, it's actually the parent organization. For the longest time, we have been working as individual islands. There would be the joinery and woodwork manufacturing. There would be scaffolding in the UAE, there's scaffolding in India. We would have a real estate development arm here in the UAE and then one in the US. All of these got set up over time. But the idea for Linus International being set up is essentially consolidating all of that under one single umbrella, setting up a board of advisors and board of directors. It becomes a technical holding company. Over time, I realized that our ideal structure is that of a cycle wheel, right? Hub and spoke. So you have a central hub and every company is basically a spoke that comes out of it and is connected to it. So it has a similar core. All of them have similar core functionalities that they can share. And then they individually work on their business style, their operations, their culture in their own way. So that structure was critical so that we can actually obviously bring much more savings to the group, bring more control to the group. savings because there will be shared resources that will be used across all companies. Then growth would happen through the center. It's like a federal state model, if you think about it, right? The center essentially would then allocate budgets if required, as required for each company, depending on their growth strategies. Each company would manage itself, but the center would then drive the strategy and the direction. There'd be a board meeting where members and representatives of each organization would essentially come in and sit in the board meeting and put forward the next agenda. This is usually done monthly. In other companies, you'll see this happening quarterly, but we do it monthly so that we can move very fast. The Middle Eastern environment, specifically the UAE environment, is a very like fast-moving one. 1 year could be a boom, the next year is a recession. So you have to be on top of it. So Linus was set up as a parent organization. The stakeholders here specifically are all essentially family members, and they're not a lot. There's only about 3 of us. I am primarily the CEO. My father serves as the chairman, and we have a few advisors who are industry professionals, confidants, mentors, people we respect, people who are far larger than us and have been here far longer than we have, who would be able to guide us based on their experience, their knowledge. Of course, we're continually looking for more mentors. So essentially, when you look at stakeholders, there are stakeholders that have a financial holding in the company, and there are stakeholders that are just in an advisory role. There are no other shareholders that we basically cater to or actually respond to. They're all internal. So we do not, I guess, suffer the whims of a variety of an investor pool that essentially can come and change our investment tactics and our strategy. So essentially, we drive our own strategy at this stage. That's the luxury that we've got. Every new company that we are potentially looking at from an acquisition standpoint will fall into this same structure. The organization will be invested into or acquired by Linus, that's the parent organization, and would then be assimilated into the company culture and structure, organization, way of working, way of reporting. That's the model that has been created. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Greetings, sir. Myself, Aparna. I would like to question you that, sir, what do you think about the biggest strength of your company right now?
That's a very interesting question. I guess the strength, it does depend on, it depends on a variety of things, actually. Linus by itself is actually a holding company, as I mentioned. So the strengths and the weaknesses are specific to each organization and not the parent. The strength of the parent company still would be that it has a very strong set of values, that this is how we work, this is what we do. These are the results that we wish to see. Here is our culture and our mission and our vision. As much as people think that the mission and the vision concept is a very up in the air kind of a fluff, you know, just kind of like, oh, this is what we do. It sounds really nice to talk about it. The reality is that it does make a huge difference. So our mission is first to take care of our people and remind them that when they're part of the organization, that they're going to continue to be part of the organization as long as they want to be. We care for them. We take care of them, their families. We take care of all the obligations that we have, and we go beyond that to try to remind them that they're part of a bigger goal. It's not just an employee-employer relationship. That mission, essentially, we want to translate that over all our organizations. And it's easier said than done, because every organization essentially has its own culture. It has its own behavior, mannerisms. But the strength of the organization comes in trying to understand each organization's operative individuality. Every company operates differently, behaves individually. It's like, almost think about it like children, right? You're going to love all your children equally, but you know each child is different. They're still going to have the same family values, but they're going to behave differently using those values, right? So you tell them, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, be nice to people, don't, do this, or give them a positive mindset of like, okay, go out and achieve and all that, but they will do it on their terms and they should do it their way, as far as they remember what the family values are. So the strength is a value system, is understanding that all the companies are essentially going to be transparent. They're going to be ethical. They're going to be extremely driven to take care of its own staff and its employees, and then not micromanage them. That's the most critical thing. If you leave people with the idea that they are driven by certain metrics and they have to achieve goals without sitting over their head and reminding them that they need to do that, they will most likely feel very comfortable to achieve that and go beyond. That's where the strength needs to be, because the traditional cultural norm, specifically in Indian-born organizations, is to actually bear down on the employee and constantly remind them, this is what you need to do, where is the result. So it's a cultural thing. It's micromanagement at its max. That if you can find a way to not do that, or if you can find a way to build that into the culture that people are self-driven based on results alone, and then they're rewarded for that action, and they are not chastised for the mistakes they make, then that can become a tremendous strength of the organization, something that would be fairly rare, and you only see this in tech companies largely.
Thank you, sir.
No, you're welcome.
Good day, sir.
Good day.
This
How are
is
you doing,
Deepak.
Deepak? Yeah.
Fine, sir. What about you, sir?
I'm doing absolutely fine. Yeah.
Sir, can you share who is your inspiration in your career?
To be very honest, I've had a variety of inspirations over the years. People always think that there would be that one person, individual, or organization that you'd look at and be like, that's where I want to be. But over the years, you have to realize that you will change as a person. You will change as a business, and your strategy and your plan will change. Your direction will change. My story is entirely about change. And every time you change, you will find a new inspiration. So initially, my inspiration was from our community. There was a business professional who I really used to look up to. He was a friend of my father's and part of the same Indian community. I was doing fairly well. Today, I don't see him as a mentor. I see him as a very respectful individual that I would still take guidance from. But now my belief and inspiration has moved on to people who have started from zero and set up a private equity fund, because that's my goal today. So today I look up to those people. There's actually about 3 people that I look up to right now. And I am emulating a lot of their characteristics, understanding from where they failed and they made their mistakes to kind of do what I need to do next to set up my private equity fund. Now, the easier answer would have been, I would have just named a celebrity. I could have said Elon Musk or something like that. But honestly, their stories are so different that to try to emulate them is like an ant looking up to a mountain being like, I want to be as big as that, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense, because in your circle, it's never going to make sense. His story, for example, of Elon Musk alone is so vastly different. His formula is so different. His environment is so different. He's in different countries, a different culture. He grew up differently. His intelligence level is different. His focus is different. To look up to him as an aspirational goal it doesn't have a value to it. It doesn't have worth. He's an entrepreneur in a very specific set of sectors. He's a serial investor. He's a very outspoken person. How is that going to affect your journey? I cannot tell you, because it is so vastly different from where you are, or you will be, or I will be, or anywhere. So you have to look at in your journey at that point in time, based on that milestone you want to achieve, who's going to be that inspiration, right? And that's what I'm doing at every step. After I'm done with my private equity, I don't know what's coming next, right? This could be a 5-year journey or a 10-year journey. Let's say after that, I choose to do something else. All of this history has been created. It's great, and it's going to continue to run. It's not stopping. So to move to something else means to add to this. I'll have different mentors. I'll have different inspirations. I'll be looking up to different people. And every step is you're going to look at people who are much higher than you are. But they are higher on that step. You don't look at the multi-billionaire top 5 or the richest person in this country or the most powerful in that country. You look at on that step who's the best or who is the most inspirational or who's done it right. There are people who look like they've done it right, but then years later you'll find out they actually were either playing a game or they weren't playing by the rules. Because at the end of the day, I want to be here as long as I can in this business and continue to do more business. So I can't cut corners. I can't look for shortcuts. A lot of people look for shortcuts, and ultimately that will come and catch them 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. The justification of a lot of people will be like, well, for that 15 years, he made a lot of money and he enjoyed himself. But do you want to be in a position where you want to be remembered for the wrong things? I don't. So I'd rather find that right mentor. Right now, I have a couple of private equity firms here whose owners and principals started 15 years ago in this field and are today one of the largest in the region and very well respected. Proof of record of their performance is known to all. So to use them as an inspiration, as a mentor, and the people that I looked up to is much more important to me than looking up to even, the CEO of the largest oil company here in UAE, or in Saudi, a $2 trillion company, right? That means nothing. It will in no way affect me. And by no way can I learn from them that it would make any changes to me at my point. So yeah, that's the short. I try to keep it as short as possible, but yeah, that's the idea.
Basically, it takes
Thank
on
you,
the
sir.
way, on the way you get it to whatever, then you pick and just move forward.
Correct. That's
Where
exactly
you
what
can
it is.
benchmark yourself,
To
where
take you to
can
the next.
benchmark. Yeah.
To take you to the next step. That doesn't mean that leader or that inspiration or that mentor or whatever is no longer valuable. It's just that now you need to go to another level, so you need someone even bigger, more accomplished. And that's how you go. It's always milestone, step. People think you can just jump to a certain level. That's never good.
Greetings, sir. Sir, this is
Are you
Adithya.
ready? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity for the similarity section.
It's my pleasure. It's my
Sir,
pleasure to be here, to talk to you. Please.
Sir, I would like to ask, how would you like to further develop yourself? Which areas would you like to further develop yourself, sir?
Like I said, I'm a very strong proponent of remaining perpetually uncomfortable. It's very easy for us to just kind of relax, right? I mean, I'll give a very simple example. If I want to stay relaxed, I could just be still in that position where the first company is performing the way it is. There's enough money coming in. After a while, money is not important. You have the money, you can buy whatever you want. You can sit there, be comfortable, watch your Netflixes every day and relax, but you'll get nowhere. So to actually grow to the next level, you almost always have to be searching. Where am I going to be next? Where should I be next? Where is it going to be uncomfortable? Where am I going to grow and develop? So I don't know yet what the future holds, but the private equity sector itself is very attractive to me. It's because it is a tremendous challenge. I know nothing about the sector, absolutely nothing, right? It is such a high risk environment for me because in private equity, you take other people's money and you take a little bit of yours and then you invest in other companies, right? So you're not the owner of that company and you're not the owner of this money. So you're actually playing with a lot of resources that don't belong to you, right? And then of course you have a goal. You are taking money because you're going to give returns to these investors and you're promising them something. So you need to see all of these companies that you are individually investing in, using their money and a little bit of yours. All of them should be performing well. That means it's 10 times the amount of effort, right? With each company that's coming in, I struggled to get one company off the ground. Now there might be 8 or 10 companies. So the challenge is multiplied, and you have to keep an eye on the numbers of the company. You have to look at the performance on a weekly, if not monthly basis. What I'm trying to get at is, I am not a finance professional, right? I'm not going to be sitting here and telling you that I'm going to be able to analyze every company perfectly and look at their performance and take the right decision at the right time. I'll bring the right people in the team to do that with me, but I'm going to be very uncomfortable doing it. I know for a fact I'm going to ask stupid questions. I'm going to probably literally start like I'm a fresher. But I have learned enough in the past to know how to gauge. I have some level of instinct now, right? I mean, I can sit there and I can look at a company and I can be like, this is just wrong. And they can fight me and they can argue. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is wrong. I've seen manufacturing businesses. You're not doing it right. So you either need to change it or modify it. I'm uncomfortable saying this also, because at the end of the day, I've acquired part of this company. So I have some attachment to it now. I want it to perform well, but I don't want to actually be the guy who sits there and cuts it down. So the next level of growth is going to be where next I'll be most uncomfortable. And that's what you have to find. And then before you know it, investing in companies will be a cakewalk. It'll be a joke 5 years from now, right? I'll just look at a company. I'll be like, oh, plus, minus, blah, 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 blah. Yep, this is a good deal. This is not a good deal. At that point, it'll become clear to me what I'm supposed to do next. Right now, difficult to say where we're going to be, because the private equity thing is the next 5 to 10 year play that I need to kind of push for.
Greetings, sir.
And you're welcome.
Yes, myself, Adithya. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, it's a pleasure, Ganpati. It's nice to talk to you also.
Yes, yes. Sir, what are your topmost priorities as a CEO?
Number one is going to be strategy, that you almost always keep an eye on your strategy. You have to see to it that everyone thinks that a strategy is a fixed thing, but it's actually not. It has to keep changing. It has to keep modifying depending on the environment. The strategy this quarter might be, basically hit certain targets. The other quarter is survive. The third quarter is reduce your costs as much as you can and look at, where exactly can you bring more efficiencies. And the fourth quarter might be, oh, wow, we need to expand. So let's move into a new country. So strategy is almost always, from a CEO's perspective, the most important thing, so that your organization is agile. It is capable of flexibly moving in whatever way it needs to, really fast. The second is going to be your staff and your people. You need to keep them very, very close to you. You need to understand that your company is useless without them. The company is not a company, right? Think about it like a body without organs. So every staff member, specifically the managers and all your people under you, they're like the organs and the blood of the organization. So you need to see to it that they are taken care of. There are strong HR policies in place to kind of protect their rights, take care of them, see to it that they are compensated for all their efforts. And that I think is something that is heavily ignored. People throw that far down on the list a lot of the times. But if you keep your people happy, you empower them, and you don't micromanage them, and with the right tools, they will perform automatically. They will exceed your expectations. The third, I think, would be considered very important in other areas, but it is basically money management, cash flow. Cash flow is king from a CEO's perspective, and even from a financial professional's perspective, which I'm not a finance professional. I understand it, but I'm not one. Always remember, profits come second, cash flow comes first. Most people will not teach you that. They will always look at top line, that the numbers go up, profit, oh, that's great. No, but cash flow. If you're making a lot of cash, generating a lot of cash, but you have lower profits, you're a much more powerful and stronger company than a company that's making more profits and has less cash. So it's about numbers, I would say. Yeah, if your cash flow is good, you're low on debt, or you're capable of servicing your debt, this critical factor is all about numbers. Know your numbers like the back of your hand. know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, where your weaknesses in your organization are, and dramatically and drastically change those things as fast as you can, because your culture and your employees and your staff and your strategy won't mean anything if you don't have money, right? Everything will collapse. So yeah, I hope that kind of
Hi, sir.
answers the question. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is Sharon Dinia. I would
Yes.
like to ask you, in your terms, what is corporate strategy, and give some inputs to develop the strategies?
A corporate strategy is not, it's a living document. Like I said, let's say it's put down on paper. It's not something that is very easily definable, because in textbooks and all that, they'll tell you what corporate strategy is. There are policies and systems in place. There are, a board would sit down and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do in the short term. This is what we're going to do in the medium term. And this is what we're going to do in the long term. It would usually be a 1 year, a 3 year, or a 5 year plan for any corporation, any organization. However, in the market today, in the world today, the corporate strategy cycle is a lot shorter. You now have to look at your strategy on a monthly or a less than quarterly basis. It's basically where your company needs to be, what it needs to focus its resources and time on. If right now my corporate strategy might be UAE is in a boom, Dubai is booming right now from a real estate perspective, then any company that basically focuses in a directly or indirectly with the real estate sector, in manufacturing, in construction, and real estate development, the strategy has shifted towards leveraging that, trying to make as many deep connections as possible in the market. But that's a short-term strategy. The long-term strategy will be implementation of certain technologies. And each company is doing this on their own level, right? Implementation of certain technologies to not only optimize, but automate certain processes, reduce dependency on people, reduce dependency on bringing outside parties, that means outsourcing, as much as possible. So corporate strategy for us is a living document. It's very difficult to answer. I mean, I can tell you what it is right now, but 6 months later, the short-term corporate strategy will be far different from what it is right now. The medium-term corporate strategy would be that as a group, we have to continually focus on the development of our organizations beyond its borders. If it has done well in the UAE, then the same formula needs to be implemented in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar. And as it expands into the UK, our scaffolding company is expanding into the UK, it has to basically see to it that that expansion is strategically at least in line with what our growth is expected to be. So acquisitions, mergers within that area have now become part of our strategy, which previously was not. So that's a medium term. In the long term, the goal will essentially be to create a conglomerate that is hyper-focused on certain metrics, which is it needs to have a certain amount of EBITDA, needs to have certain response to its shareholders from a return perspective, ultimately becoming a good target as a group, as a conglomerate to potentially get listed. This could be a 10-year 10-year strategy in the future, is to get listed and bring on public shareholding. Now, 5 years down the line, I don't know what's going to happen. 3 years, I don't know what's going to happen. So you can have these strategies in place, which will again change depending on how the market will change. Today, AI technologies have come out and it's so nascent and so early. I can't even predict what's going to happen in the next 6 months. And that might completely change our business. I mean, our interior design business might see its greatest threat ever, because AI tools like Mid-Journey and all this will essentially completely challenge the concept of interior design by itself, because the armchair AI specialist can sit there and just do a design that my artist or my designer would take weeks to do, and they would do it in minutes. So strategy will shift, strategy will change. And the concept of strategy, what it used to be, is very different now than it used to be before. you don't have a long runway of like a 5 or 10 years to put a strategy in place and then slowly check whether it's working and continue to go in that direction. So I know it's not a very clear answer, but unfortunately, even I don't have a clear answer on this, because I came in thinking that you need to have a nice, clear strategy across the board. But every organization sets its own strategy. And from a central perspective, the strategy is purely an investment play. We continue to invest in newer companies, in newer organizations, bring more optimize them a lot more, reduce their costs and their dependencies. And that's a common thread of strategy across the board.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you please tell us how did you make decisions in challenging times and made them right?
So challenging times, I would say from a company perspective, the most challenging time is almost always a recession, right? A recession which essentially can completely destroy your organization, because what I mentioned before is cash. You run out of cash, right? Your accounts receivables, your accounts payables are completely out of control. Your accounts payables is continually standing there and adding pressure to your books because you got to pay. Accounts receivable is in heavy negative because when there's a recession, nobody wants to pay. So what you actually do is essentially sit there and understand what the fundamentals of the organization is, and that is relationships. So when you talk to your suppliers, you talk to your vendors, you talk to your clients, you bring them to the table, you explain to them transparently. Do not ignore them. You sit down and be like, this is the challenge that I'm facing. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. We are always going to work together, but we need to build a plan to get through this challenge. And that's how I tried a lot of the times. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you 50 things, reduce your cost and expense and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if there's no money coming into the company, it really means nothing. No amount of reduction of cost is going to fix the fact that there is no cash in the company, because you can't bring your expenses down to zero. So the idea would be, when there are challenges, mostly the challenges for an organization are related to lack of cash. Other challenges are ones that are far easily managed. Your manager leaves you, creates a gap in the organization. And other ones would be that you had a huge pipeline of business and suddenly about 50% of it vanishes. For whatever reason, it shuts down. No projects are coming in, or your major source of income is business shut down. Your client basically shut down. But what does that mean? That means there's no less cash coming in. So at the end of the day, all you need to realize is your business's success, whether in good times or in bad times, is completely dependent on how you're going to manage your cash. So you need to keep looking at your books. That's what I did. You need to understand, my God, what's coming in is 100. I'm spending 150. I need to fix this. So either I bring in more money from somewhere, like bring more projects or increase sales, or I reduce cost. But even the reducing cost, as I said, you cannot go below a certain level. There's a bare minimum cost that's going to be there always, right? You're going to pay your rent. You have to pay your electricity and your water. So it's only a matter of cash flow management. That's what you should focus on first. The greatest challenges that an organization will mostly face are going to be economic challenges, a global recession, a local recession, or a sectoral collapse, right? If you're in a certain sector and it completely shuts down, right? That entire sector completely collapses for some weird reason. New law came in and something changed, right? And now your costs have gone up. So at the end of the day, everything's hurting your bottom line. So that's your biggest challenge. So to do that, I just had to keep as much of an eye on the numbers. And you need to be extremely flexible. You look at the numbers and be like, oh, I have to make a decision today what I'm going to do to make this balance out. I have to figure out what to do this tomorrow. I have to figure this out day after tomorrow. There's no next week or next month or whatever. That's how I see it.
That's interesting, sir. I think we are crossing an hour. It's completing.
Yeah.
So maybe I wanted to have one question with you.
Sure.
We call it the rubric or matrix, or even we call it KPI. Now, what are the key indicators you measure with your second level layer members you wanted to test upon, or you wanted to have it for them to perform towards the major KPIs or metrics? Can you please share it?
So yes, each company has got its own KPIs. So a manufacturing business will have its own standard manufacturing KPIs. Then you've looked at the scaffolding business, which is more of a rental and sale organization. It'll have its own KPIs. Basically, you cannot have a unified KPI. You can't measure the scaffolding business the same way you would measure a joinery or woodwork manufacturing, and the same way you would not be able to measure a real estate development company. What you would measure are certain accounting and financial principles, ratios, systems that you can actually kind of be very strict about. For example, if you have aging of your accounts receivable and accounts payables, if the numbers are going up, you know your companies are weak. So you can find that out weekly, you can find that out monthly. If you have payables and you're supposed to pay them in 30 days and you're paying them in 60, something's off. Either you're badly managed or you don't have enough money. Your receivables are supposed to come in 30 days and they're coming in 180 days. There is something very, very wrong, right? You need to fix that. So each organization will have financial KPIs and it will have other performance metrics specific to that business. For example, the scaffolding business is a stock-based business. You have scaffolding stock that you give out to clients for rent, or you sell them. Now, if you have 100 pieces of stock and you've given out 80 pieces for rent, you could have 20 pieces sitting with you. That's called idling. If you have 20% idling, that's not good, right? The industry standard, which you learn with each sector, each business, each industry, there is an industry standard. The industry standard is 4%. So my target will be to see to it my specific scaffolding company does 4% idling at a minimum. If it does anything better than that, everyone gets bonuses, you know. But if it is more than 4%, that means more than 4% of that 100 pieces of stock are sitting idle. That means I'm not earning money on them. That is locked capital. That is just sitting there wasting cash, right? Then that's a problem. So KPIs are specifically designed for each organization, but the center looks at KPIs only from a financial standpoint. This is what you need to achieve. Here is where you need to be in the safe zone. You're having cash flow problems. Here are your metrics. Debt is a super important number. All organizations will have some form of debt, whether they have car loans or if they have taken a term loan from a bank. They needed working capital, something or the other. Is the company being capable of paying its EMIs? If not, something's wrong. There is a KPI for that. So the center looks at the financial health of the organization, and each individual organization looks at its own KPIs for performance, operations, because each company's operations is very different. Real estate companies' KPIs would be, are the projects that you're developing finishing on time, right? Are there any delays? What are the number of days of delay? Are the units that you're trying to sell selling for some reason, or they're not selling? Are your salespeople reaching their targets? So they have a whole array of KPIs from an individual department basis. The salespeople will have its KPIs, the operations people will have its KPIs, the finance people will have its KPIs. And the center, which is, let's say in our case, Linus International, will have its KPIs where it will use that single cheat sheet for every single company. AR, AP, cash flow, any other major financial metrics. That's how I do it. There's no single rule to this. A bunch of organizations out there I know that use very different rules for their own KPIs, but then they are a lot of the times very narrowly focused. They might have 10 companies, but all of them focused in real estate, for example. So they can unify their KPIs for all of them. For us, our companies are diversified.
Maybe the rubric side, we can say that, but in general, we can call it a strategic side one, you can see, and staffing side, another you can see, and financial side, maybe you can see, you know, in general,
Absolutely.
we can have it in that, but they will narrow down according to their business background.
It's essentially departmental also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
even
if you look at
departments or individuals, we can call it, you know, it goes
Correct.
from the top to bottom. As you said,
Absolutely.
well said, a strategy is a living document. It's never an ending document. Always you have to keep that strategic document as an open document for you to get it amended time to time. The single document, we can't close, right? It cannot be rigid. It should be dynamic according to the environmental flow and the market flow. You got to modify.
Absolutely.
Of course, the end goal will be the
Perfect.
same, yeah, and things will be the same. But the moving implementation side, you will have to, have some flexibility to work on, right? So.
Absolutely, I completely agree. We couldn't have said it better. Honestly, that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
All your strategies will continue to change. Just to give you one example, a final one. When you look at the fashion company Zara, Zara essentially was at the forefront of development of new fashion technologies depending on the season. So it would have 2 seasons a year. Today, it is sitting on between 18 to 20 seasons a year. Geologically, you can see there are only 4 seasons, right? But they created those different seasons, fast fashion, and basically, changed their entire strategy so they can provide a lot more. Their sales have gone through the roof. It's their owner is one of the richest people in the world today, specifically because the strategy changed depending on market conditions, the new generation. This was never part of their strategy in the beginning, right? This was something they were staunchly against, actually. So that's why that flexibility and agility is important.
Oh, that's great, sir. That's really good, sir. Thank you so much, sir. You have spent your valuable time 1 hour with us. I guess you today, now it's a cultural, the events going on with your country, I think, where you are residing, right? I think.
Yeah, we have
Eid
coming up, actually. So it's going to be a
this
long
week is
weekend.
Going to be a busy week for you all, I guess. Yeah.
It's exact opposite, actually. It's going to be no work over this weekend. So basically, more time with more time with the family.
The other side, we'll be spending on team building and working with, gathering each other with each other, collaborative makings. It's a kind of celebration, socialization takes place so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are going to be doing some events where we will be taking our individual staff to a variety of places all around for team building. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sumit Pathak. It's a really, really wonderful day. A lot of learnings for our students, especially even to me. We have learned a lot as a strategist, from computer to bio to law to business, and business to heading C-suite level. And actually, really, you are a diversified personality. And it's a great honor and experience for Adithya School of Business Management. And thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful time and the day with us. Please,
honestly, it's my pleasure.
Support us in future for our students' developments and whatever possible you can. We'll be in touch with you. Kindly do whatever possible for the youth development of our nation and our students. Thank you so much,
Dr. Sundar. That's very well said. Thank you for the kind words. And it is my pleasure to be able to do this. In the future, I will see to it that I'm available to support in any way possible. Do let me know how I can contribute a lot more. It is, again, I feel like I'm not experienced enough to be in this position to guide people in the right direction.
You're traveling itself across the world. It's a great experience. Indian culture and education, we are into, in a nutshell, we are into this rigid, confined way of training and development or teaching. We do it in classrooms. International experience, something very much lacked among our students. That's where I have gone through places like US and even Malaysia and Singapore. I have taught like 14 over years UK MBA programs. And I was into US for SAP side, and like you, IT fellow, and having some experience in the US. Now coming back here, I could see the change and the gap between our students and our education system. And that's where we want to bridge through, like people like you all coming forward and helping this Corona. We have to thank this Corona, bringing up this online education and sharing and meeting people like you all, corporate people. Yeah. And this is what we want to do the best for our students. And I'm glad the people are coming forward like you all from the industry and supporting us. Thank you so much, Mr. Smith, once again. And have a great
day. It's my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure. And do let me know how I can contribute in the future. It would be my pleasure.
Definitely, sir. Definitely, sir. We need your support. Definitely. Thank you so much.
It would be a pleasure to support ASBM. And Dr. Sundar, if there's anything else that you require, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me.
I'll be in touch with you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great day, sir. Thank you. Sir.
Thank you. And my pleasure. And it was wonderful meeting you all. So have a wonderful day. And if anyone has any specific questions, do shoot me an email anytime.
Sure, sir. Pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.